Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Curate Webinar Specials CXO series. Today's topic is High Impact Learning at Scale, Building the New Age Professionals. Today we have with us Mayank Kumar, co-founder and managing director of upGrad. And this session will be moderated by Samir Dhanrajani, CEO and co-founder, AI Curate Advisory and Consulting. Before we start the session, some housekeeping rules. Firstly, please be on mute. It will help better audio experience for all the participants. Leave your questions in the chat window to be taken up for Q&A. This webinar is being recorded, and this playback video will be hosted on our website, www.aicurate.ai. Now I would like to introduce Mayank, an education maven and accomplished entrepreneur. Mayank Kumar is one of the sharpest minds leading the EdTech revolution in India. Mayank co-founded India's largest online higher education company, upGrad, along with Rani Screwwala and Falgun Kompalli. upGrad provides programs in the areas of data science, technology, management, law, and MBA to college students, working class, and enterprises in partnership with national and international universities like IIT Madras, IIT Bangalore, MICA, Duke Corporate Education, Deakin University, Liverpool John Moores University, and others. Founded in 2015, in a span of 5 years, upGrad has onboarded over 53,000 paid learners and have impacted more than 500,000 learners globally till date. Mayank Kumar is currently serving as the co-founder and managing director at upGrad. An IIT Delhi and ISB alumni, Mayank was named the 40 under 40 Achiever of the Year by Business World Disrupt in 2017. Mayank, thank you very much for making time to be with us today. Samir, over to you.
Thanks.
Thanks, NK. And Mayank, it's a pleasure to have you at the webinar specials. Knowing you from last 5 years, I must confess, I think upGrad has created a very vantage position in the learning and education space, and congratulations to you and to your team, and wish many more, I would say, success and accomplishments in the time to come.
Thank you, Samir.
Just to get the ball rolling, Mayank, and there's a lot which has happened in the last few years in terms of education, learning, and the workspace. Now, first of all, the future of work, coupled with exponential technologies, has really created ripples not only for technology professionals, but for edtech players, for academic institutes. And seemingly, the new segments of what we say learners have come in from startups, deep tech firms, even the existing IT set, I would say IT providers who had a huge workforce, and also the gig workers. Now, what strategic model shifts you see and what you've seen in the past, which you would like to kind of really call out from a learning and education side, what's happened in the overall sector?
I think, Samir, I think one of the things that at least what has fundamentally changed, so let's say if I just go a generation back of education and the current context, is that the half-life of knowledge is coming down significantly. What used to be that, look, if I learn this thing, it will stay with me for a longer period of time, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. That suddenly seems to have come tapered down significantly. So what you learned in engineering no longer is required. And I think that shift is happening very, very rapidly. That coupled with the private sector ecosystem, wherein individuals are frequenting job shifts and job hopping on a consistent basis, what we are seeing as a macro shift is that an individual in the journey of their career goes through about 7 to 8 different career changes. While if you go back to our parents and a generation back, they stayed in one job for the entire career. That fundamental shift has led to emergence of these new models that you spoke about, Samir, on edtech and sort of online education, etc., which are catering to these professionals, deep tech firm professionals, or IT services companies, or startups, because come to think of it, the jobs that exist today, like UI UX developer, in fact, did not exist. The jobs that exist today of digital marketeers, 15, 20 years back did not exist. So a lot of these jobs are coming up very, very quickly, and therefore people have to spend time and resources to spend and invest in themselves to scale up. And in that thought process, Samir, if you look at from, let's say, this situation from 2005, 2006 onwards on the online education space, I would say there are three different phases in which edtech and online education has evolved. The phase one, if you think of it, actually started with um, the phase one started in the entire thought process of making content accessible. So at that point in time, the MOOCs came into existence. The Skillsoft, which was one of the leading providers at that point in time, came into existence. That you can access a content library and learn something interesting and meaningful. So that was the phase one of the education, where people said, okay, if I build the best content and put it out there, people will consume that content. And a lot of companies evolved in that zone. Phase two of the content is where we have seen that shift happening about 4, 5, 6 years back, wherein the entire shift moved from content access to engagements and completion. Because when we gave the content access, we suddenly realized that, look, all of this is great, but people are not completing. Because how many of us actually go to a library to study something and learn something? We go there, but we come out very quickly. So the phase two that we saw emergence of was completion and NPS and engagement. How do I complete the learner? How do I take them through the journey? A lot of that have started happening at that time was, how do I compare education to gyms to ensure completion rates increase? But I think we are now at a very interesting time, Samir, wherein we are now venturing into the phase three of edtech and online education evolution, wherein we are moving from content access to completion and engagement to outcomes. Wherein can we deliver on outcomes to the learner? If they're spending 100 hours, 50 hours, 200 hours, do I really see a tangible difference that has happened? And therefore you will see emergence of outcome-based models, outcome-based platform, where people are saying that, look, you don't need to pay me right now, you can pay me on success, or even existing companies saying that, look, if you're paying me upfront, I will charge this much, but if I give you success, I will charge you more. So I think that's the beauty in which things have evolved, and much fast in the last 15 years, in chunks of 5 years, that we have seen these sort of shifts happening in the ecosystem right now.
So I think that's a great analogy what you gave, Mayank. I mean, akin to what happens in the corporates where there is a time and effort of annuity billing, where many of the clients have actually ranted out that, look, where is the outcome? Where is the ROI? I think that's where I think it's good to know how you see that space in terms of having a learner getting onboarded, seeing that kind of a early kind of a, let's say, understanding in terms of what he or she wants to really get into, and then go deep in terms of investing time, effort, and money into that. So alongside, and that's a great rendition what you provided to start with. Alongside, there is an also aspect what you touched as a part of phase two, which is interesting, and I want you to kind of really elaborate for our participants, is this whole facet around uh, the content, the whole pedagogy, the whole content, the whole aspect of delivery channel. It's gone through a big change over the last few years and all. Now, from a point of view where upGrad is currently positioned, how do you see that today? Because learners have their own set of requirements. They would like to capture, hey, while there is a generic course line, there is a content, there is a kind of a delivery channel, which is all kind of automated. There is a platform. Where is that upgrade comes in as a part of differentiation? Because we are talking about a competition stack as well. And how do you see also this space evolving, Mayank, please?
So let me first answer the content play, Samir. So again, the best way to sort of understand that is if you just go back to history or go back in past, because history teaches you a lot of things that have happened. So when people first see, and I'm just giving a proper analogy. If you go back in the history of education evolution, um, when radio came in, people said education will get disrupted, but nothing happened. Then came television. People said education will get disrupted. Then nothing happened. And then happened online education, and people said education will get disrupted. Still, things are slowly moving. I think what happened in the entire journey, Samir, was that people tried to put the content online, in the sense that they said, if this is how we are talking in a classroom, let's record it and let's put it online. And I don't know how many of us out here and on the group today remember the Doordarshan Gyan Darshan channel, which used to capture IIT professors who will come, or even globally Stanford lectures getting captured and delivered on television, etc. What we failed to realize, Samir, in this entire thought process was two things. One, when a teacher is teaching in a classroom and when you're trying to record that setting, or when you're teaching on a webinar and we're trying to create that setting, um, you are unfortunately capturing a theater artist, but you're presenting them as movie stars.
Say that again. I think that's a very good thing what you said. Say that again, please.
See, great faculty members are great theater artists. They can go in a classroom of 50 students and they can enthrall them. They can look into your eyes, they will react, they will pass on a joke, they will engage in a different manner. But to convert a theater artist into a movie star is a fundamentally different ball game. Wherein how do you talk on camera and build that sort of engagement tool with the learner? On a webinar, when I'm talking to you, Samir, and so many folks out here, I can still talk and make you nod your head. In a classroom, I can do that. But if I record the same thing and I put it up on a recorded lecture, unfortunately, that engagement is very different. Uh, I don't start thinking that, look, am I recording this? But I'm not going to talk to Samir like this. I'm actually talking to Samir in a recorded lecture format, which requires slightly different thought process of how to engage with the learner in that journey. So I think that phase of transition, a lot of folks in the content space did not envisage, and they said, if I'm recording a webinar, let me record this and put it up online, and people will learn from that because there's some good wisdom that came out of that conversation. But that learning is not designed for a asynchronous delivery of learning. The second thing that we noticed, which we did not take in perhaps not taken in as much as what we could have, is this entire concept of cliffhangers, or the concept of leaving the series at a place where people can come back and watch it again. And I jokingly say to many people, if you remember, specifically globally, of all the series that you watch, and I'm just giving a slightly more Indian context example. If you watch these soap operas of mother-in-law, daughter-in-law fighting with each other, and that sort of genre that got created, there used to be these scenes wherein the lady of the house, this phone will ring, tring tring. The lady of house will walk in, and you're watching with a lot of intensity, and she will pick up the phone and she will say hello, and then the screen will get frozen. Then you say, okay, come back next week and watch how this scene evolved. All of the family members would come next week and watch and sit in front of television to watch what happened next week. The lady of the house would still pick up the phone and say, sorry, wrong number, and she will keep the phone down. But all of us came back to watch her again. That's what you seem to have happened on let's say Game of Thrones, or a House of Cards, or a Homeland, etc., where people create cliffhangers to generate binge watching phenomena. That in education is not that strong. So in the content space, how do you make content engaging so that people can come back again and again with the right hook, with the right sort of ecosystem, but at the same time creating that experience for the online world and not creating the experience which was done for the offline world and recorded it for the online world. I think those are two big trends that you will see and foresee in the education sector, specifically when it comes to the content creation and content ecosystem.
Wonderful, wonderful. No, I think that's a great thing what you said. Sticking on to content, Mayank, there is a question which I want to take, which is upGrad has umpteen exponential technology programs, courses, and all. Now, having said that, these technologies move at a very fast pace, high velocity. And often there is a question, even from learners, look, what I'm learning today, maybe a Python or a kind of a, let's say, Julia computing, TensorFlow, R, would that be relevant when I actually take the course and move out? Now, as player who's been there in the marketplace for 5 years, how have you kept up to this particular speed of the content in terms of the technology programs, what you learn, and the other set of programs? And is there a kind of a, let's say, trend in the making where learners will say, okay, this is where I know where I stand today. These are the stack of technologies. And let me see what comes in the next 2 years, and I'll take one more plunge. Is that what you see, or there's something else you have from your perspective, please?
I think two things, Samir, on this one. I'm sorry, there's some. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry. So, Samir, there's two things on this that we foresee. I think one, when we teach someone these new technologies, we focus a lot more on the foundation and the fundamental skills rather than tools, because we believe the tools will come in and go, but you need to teach them the basic foundations of, let's say in data science, what is data science, how do you apply data science, how do you look at machine learning, rather than teaching them tools like Python, SAS, or so on and so forth. Because once you focus on those tools, tools will change on a consistent basis. uh, Tools are what I call it in the education parlance, fast food, that you have to come and pick it up. Long form programs in what I call in education parlance more fine dining. So you go to fast food because you want to have quick food, eat it out, get out of the shop very quickly. Fine dining, you go and invest in yourself, enjoy the aroma, and then go through the entire experience. Um, so the entire sort of fine dining experience is where foundational skills come in. While on the fast food, you work on just-in-time skill set. So at an upgrade level, we work on a lot of these foundational skills rather than just tool-based skills. That's one. Two, in order for us to, we appreciate that the technology changes much rapidly, and therefore about 20 to 30% of our content still goes through churn. That even though we may have very strong understanding of certain tools, or we don't spend a lot of time on certain tools, but we do have to change that as in the entire process. So we were teaching a lot in R, and about 2 years back we shifted completely on Python, because Python emerged as a much stronger sort of platform to teach to teach data science. So basis the industry requirement, we do see a significant shift happening in the way we create content, and the way we churn the content in the entire process. But the fact we that we are seeing right now, as a strong, as a strong. Okay, sorry, there's a bit of a disturbance. Sorry. Yeah,
Can you make this participant go on mute, please? Seems to be kind of.
I am handling. Don't worry. Please continue.
yeah. So I was saying, Samir, that the last bit that is that we are seeing is that emergence of this new concept, which is around lifelong learning. That if you think of football coaches, and if you were playing for Man U, and then suddenly someone took you from Man U to Juventus, the manager earned along with you as a footballer, as a football player. The same phenomena is what we are seeing evolve in the career space also. People are looking for lifelong career coaches. Yeah, help me go from $10,000 salary to $100,000 salary. Help me go from 5 lakh rupees to 50 lakh rupees. And in the journey of that, both of us will benefit from that increased journey. So we see the emergence of people coming to upgrade and saying, hey, you help me in the next job, but why don't you partner with me for the long run? Why don't you help me? Fine, I moved from senior software engineer to data scientist, but I want to become an AI engineer, a machine learning engineer. Maybe 2 years later, I will come back to you with a specific upskilling need, an upskilling skill set. So can you map the journey of the learner for a period of 10 to 15 years and be part of the learning journey and enable the person to move from step one to step two to step three to step four, and in the process of that become your lifelong learning partner? That's an ambitious aspect that I'm talking about, Samir. But as the situation evolves, it's a likely scenario that we will end up seeing at the end of the day.
No, I think you really made this particular thing a bit, I would say, really thoughtful and ruminating. Because the reason I say that, look, and this is again going back, you started with your narrative that the career spans of individuals have increased. It's not just 2025, it's about almost 40, 45 years of careers. And with the shifts happening in smaller kind of, let's say, chunks, it's very essential for them to understand not only their learning needs, as you rightly said, but also in terms of how they can be handholded to a stage where they can start understanding more about what does it take them from being an intermediate in a particular kind of a segment to kind of a, let's say, proficient to advanced or a guru level. So I think that's a good part. But seemingly, if I just infuse one more point over there, Mayank, upGrad has been a pioneer in stitching partnerships with marquee institutes, the triple IT Bangalore to kind of, let's say, MICA to BITS and some of the global universities you have stitched those alliances. What's been the thought process over there? I mean, of course, there is a lot of synergy and symbioticness in terms of this partnership, but how does it works out for you and what does it mean for the learners over there when it comes to these partnerships?
Yeah, so I think I'll just break it down to all the different stakeholders. So I think one, Sameer, when you look at the online education space, investing in yourself is not a said rule in this in the current ecosystem or the society in general. You are supposed to invest. Your parents are supposed to invest in your education as kids. When you get into higher education, your parents spend for higher education also. Then you expect your company to spend on your own. Uh, so paying for your own education is a new phenomenon. Um, Two, online education is always thought of as free, and is thought as okay. Online means it's frivolous, it's easy, it's cheap, it's quick to take up. It's like fast food. I'll take it up and I'll move on with it. So when we started the journey, Samir, we were very clear that we want to position upGrad as a serious learning partner. We don't want upGrad to be considered as a also and education partner. And in the process of that, we wanted to bring in the right amount of seriousness. So we said we want to price it at discount to offline, but not at the online price point that we have right now. In the process that we realized that look, we are fighting too many said societal norms. The societal norm that online education that you have to invest in your own education after you have finished your college. That's not an existing behavior, so we have to fight that. B, we had to fight the said norm that you cannot teach anyone online because online teaching efficacy is not there. C, we have to fight it out. Okay, if you're teaching me online, the price point has to be very low. You cannot keep such high price point. So there were too many battles that we were fighting, and we said that let us not fight another battle as to who is upGrad, what is upGrad, what are you doing, what do you bring to the table, and we said can we partner with someone and bring in that level of um, uh, credibility in the ecosystem such that I can fight the three other battles that I'm supposed to fight: investing in education, online as an effective medium, and the fact that it is expensive and it is premium program, etc. So as a business call, we said, okay, now university, as you rightly said, brings in a lot of value uh, beyond credibility in content, in faculty sort of ecosystem, etc. How do I leverage that play and sort of create something meaningful out there? So that's the thought process with which we brought on board these university partners to enable us to create a very strong positioning in the ecosystem.
Sure, sure. So just linked to that, Mayank, is also this facet around what we say industry academia collaboration. I mean, seemingly, if I go back 5 years from here, I saw a great disconnect in my own experience where academia and uh, industry was at a big kind of a, let's say, divergence in terms of the thought process. To a day today, there has been a significant shift in terms of both making attempts to kind of conjoin together and say that, look, it works. What is that you kind of feel about this industry academia collaboration? And from a vantage point of upgrad, how do you see this working and how do you engage with the industry in terms of making it beneficial for your learners?
So I think one of the things that we realize very clearly that Samir, that we have to build education not from the academic first perspective, but we have to build education from an end consumer perspective. And unfortunately, my end consumers are not the learners. My end consumers are corporates, companies who are there at the end of the day hiring people and hiring the right kind of talent. So what we started doing, we realized that I need to go back to looking at the requirements that the companies have and then build a curriculum wherein I can bring in industry faculty members from the academia and bring industry together to build a curriculum which can support the final need of what the companies are looking at. So we created something called a reverse engineered curriculum, where we went through all the JDs, all those sort of aspects. And when we did that, Samir, we realized that, look, there's a dichotomy, and I should just sort of point it out here for everyone's this thing, that industry thinks that they can teach, uh, but in reality, they are not good teachers. So the industry experts are not good teachers. They are good practitioners, but when it comes to teaching and pedagogy, that aspect is not very strong in the industry sort of experts who are there right now in the ecosystem. Academia thinks that they are doing a lot of cutting edge research, so they understand how the application will also happen. But they don't seem to have that expertise of last mile connecting between industry and academia. But unfortunately, both the ecosystem in their own world feel that they know it and they have a good sense of what is happening in the ecosystem. So I think it was that time to bring both of them together. And we did what we call as Jugalbandi between the two sort of ecosystem and said, why don't you compete? And I think you were part of in many of this conversation that how do we bring them together? How do we get them to talk? How do we leverage the best in class teaching methodology that faculty members have with the best in class application methodology that industry experts have? So what you will see is that most of our programs have got both entities combined and not one versus the other, which allows us to bring the best of the two worlds into the ecosystem. And I think that's the thing that you are witnessing a lot on even business schools and offline institutions, where guest faculty come in not to take the full course, but to take 6 lectures of the 15 lecture course right now, which allows people to sort of bring in practitioner point of view, because ultimately what we are doing is last mile just in time um, um, uh, last mile just in time sort of interviews at the end of the day. So they need the last mile practitioner point of view also. So bringing both of them together does help us in solving for that need and solving for that problem that exists out there, and everyone is trying to do that in different forms and fashion. But I think, as compared to our parents' generation, where education was like a polio vaccination, that 23 you are done with it. Now that education is happening every 3 years to 6 years to 10 years, practitioners' point of view and the industry point of view will become far more relevant than what it was about a year back. So I think that's how we see things sort of evolving in the entire journey right now.
Wonderful, wonderful. So there is also a dimension over there. Uh, Learning academies within the organizations. Many of the consulting IT players, large firms, have internal learning academies. Now, as you rightly said in your initial narrative, education meant free. I mean, absolutely not to be spent in terms of all these things one has to go through. But over there, learning academies, in my own observation, I want to take your opinion also, have really failed to crack the code when it comes to really saying, look, we can teach, we can make you teach what you are doing, what it's supposed to mean. But somewhere from the employees themselves within the organization, seemingly the buy-in, hey, am I knowing the latest and greatest? Am I really tuned in terms of the market? Not seems to be happening. What's your reflection over there? And if learning academies have to do something today, given the change is imminent, what is that they should be doing as part of the larger kind of, let's say, understanding and to be in sync with the market?
So I personally, Samir, I'm a big fan of how industry academic model sort of came into existence with what Infosys did, with what a lot of companies today are doing of actually bringing academia in-house. Um, uh, but I think there are two changes that have happened in the process, which we need to be sort of cognizant of. I think earlier, when 20, 25 years back, these models started coming into emergence. One of the things were very clear that you have to teach them X because X would suffice you to do the job much better. Now the X has got 25 different variants, and that X1 to X25 have a different kind of skills required. You need to teach them, some people Java, some people Python, some people full stack development, some people data science, some people machine learning. that breadth has increased quite significantly because the requirement in the ecosystem have sort of gone and shot up quite rapidly. Two, the interventions have become far more frequent than one time at the time of joining. Uh, so a lot of what used to happen was the freshers training in Mysore campus, and then you will sort of get into workforce. But that intervention has started happening a lot more frequently. So the model that was designed as one skill, one time, has become multiple skills at different points in time. Uh, and I think that transition is where I'm seeing that the academic model is taking that time to transition. But knowing that they have been the pioneers in this space, I'm sure that that the industry will adopt to it. But it gives us an opportunity for edtech companies because they're far more nimble and far more agile in making changes and bringing those changes from the ecosystem down to the program. So to bring that ecosystem change is where we see opportunities for companies like us and so on and so forth, where we can leverage these experience and then partner with companies and say, guys, you were built for a different use case. Can I bring a different use case of multiple skills, multiple timelines, and build a more on-demand learning solutions rather than a specific in-time intervention that you had earlier created in your own versions?
Got it. Got it. No, I think that's a good point what you say. So seemingly, if we take a current juncture, Mayank, pandemic, a big kind of a, let's say, change in terms of how we see the world today, a lot of uncertainty in the market, velocity of change. First of all, would like to know how in the last couple of months upgrad has geared up, one from handling this challenge, and second, what is that you see as part of the change in terms of learning which will happen from here on?
Yeah, so I think COVID and the current scenario actually poses I think the first, it poses a huge opportunity for a lot of companies like us. It comes with its own set of challenges. Let me first talk about challenges, then I'll talk about how it has opened up the opportunities for us specifically. I think the challenges are that there is a fair amount of uncertainty built in into the ecosystem, and therefore people don't know what to do. Should I invest in myself? Should I not invest in myself? Do I do it now? Do I do it later? Will I have my job? Will I not have my job? So I think in that uncertainty ecosystem perspective, people sometimes delay the decision. That's the challenge of what the COVID has thrown at us. But the opportunity that it has thrown for us is that on multiple counts. Let's just take the university thing, which I think Ujjwal had put up as a question also. That the opportunity is that on a university side, I don't see universities opening up for the next 3 months, 6 months, or even 12-month time frame. The universities don't have the wherewithal of going online or teaching online or sort of supporting students online. And that opens up a set of opportunity where all universities will go online. And it's not just for upgrad, but it opens up the opportunity for the entire technology ecosystem because that is one space that's been always averse to technology adoption. Uh, so I think universities going online opens up a different business model, business line, and opportunity for all of us to do that. Two, a lot
Just
of
to chime in, I think the government has also opened up an option for the students to pursue second degree, and that too with online focus.
Correct. Yeah, I think the second degree is another big sort of play that the government has pushed out, and government actually has also announced the top 100 universities to go online, and there they can offer core degrees online. Samir, right now that they can offer BCom, BCA, MCA, MCom, so on and so forth, and that was non-existent 3 years back or 2 years back. So the second big opportunity that is thrown up is this online degree play, the second degree that you mentioned, or the online degrees with the top 100 universities. That opens up a bigger model because a lot of guys today who are supposed to join, let's say, tier two, tier three institutions, are no longer going to join those tier two, tier three institution. Can I offer them an online degree and tell a guy who's in Saharsa in Bihar or let's say Havra in West Bengal, you stay there, but you will get access to the best education from a Delhi University or Mumbai University or a Xavier University by sitting at home. And that is another model that sort of we are seeing emerging in the entire process. The third thing is on the working professionals place. While on one hand, there is a lack of uncertainty. What we are also noticing, Samir, is that a lot of discretionary spends for professionals have come down. All those vacations that we were supposed to take in the month of June, July, August have gone out of the window. So there's savings that people are cutting down on the discretionary spends. People are not spending on fashion, eating outside, travel, so on and so forth. Amongst the reduction in discretionary spend, education seemed to be one of those discretionary spend which is less guilty or less prone to guilt. So we are seeing that consumers and individuals are more willing to spend because A, they have time at home. B, they feel that spending on education, I don't have to feel bad about it as much as spending on buying a new car or a new television in this environment may feel, "Arey, it's an additional spend. Yeah, I can spend on education and I can go through that thing quickly because I have time at home." So we are seeing
Right.
third big opportunity that we are observing where consumers and learners are coming themselves and taking up a program with upGrad.
Great, great, great. One aspect over there, Mayank, if I shift the gears, and this is something which even for me, I want to understand. Now, future forward from here, you said in the beginning, this whole aspect about learning getting bit size, the Netflix model, as we call it, atomization, where the content will move more on a personalized side. I mean, the whole aspect of what I want to learn is what I will actually kind of get in terms of the content, personalized learning kind of a thing, will be in vogue at some point of time, which also means the traditional programs, frameworks will go for a change, which means I can accumulate credits from wherever I can learn. And necessarily, as you also said, it's not about learning uh, a particular degree. I can actually gather different kind of, let's say, facets of learning from multiple kind of a platform and create my own kind of a content. And third, I will also ensure that I also understand how it's contextualized, learning through different sources. Now, that today, in terms of, and what you could even hear telling me is very, very disjointed. How does this whole thing of personalized learning will get evolved in the time and what it means for the learner in the sense if I want to only understand a particular technique in machine learning, why I should learn about data engineering, which is a very different stream order. What are your thoughts, Mayank, over there?
Um, I think there are two sets of learning needs that individuals have. Uh, I think the first set of learning needs, as I said, are where I want to understand the fundamentals of that particular stream, which is what I call as let's call this as fine dining of education or the core educational need where you want to learn pick up a new skill. Once you know the basics of that, then you need to pick up skills which are very specific and specialized, which let's for the time being, let's call it as more just in time skills or the last mile skill sets. So the way education is there is that there is a foundational layer and then you can create specialization on top. Uh,
Sure.
when you have to move to a particular role, I think you need to know the foundational level skills very well, and that is a very important element where you need to understand what's the basics of gradient descent, how do I understand the basic math behind calculating this, what's an R square, how do I sort of think of p value and sort of t stat, etc. Because if you don't understand all those things will be everything on air and you'll not be able to build on the specific knowledge base there. But once you have that, I think there's a very large market that exists, which is just-in-time skills. So if let's say I don't know, Walmart comes and gives a project to let's hypothetically take Infosys for the sake of conversation. I want to do and I want to move everything to from a cloud from a on-premise to a cloud solution with Azure. Uh, then the requirement that will come for skill requirement is that okay, now learners pick up just-in-time skill sets, which is on cloud on Azure. Then learners will go and pick up those skill sets which are linked to that particular outcome of jobs wherein that skills are required. So I think what we will see is that there is going to be two different streams of education evolution. One will be the foundational skills and one will be the library of skills. The foundational skills you will do for deep learning, deep understanding, deep transformation, which is step change. Then you will have a bouquet of learning play where you can pick up something or the other and then learn in the entire process. Now the second model has to be supported by a lot of, first model has to have the human touch. The second model has to have a mentor touch. May not have the right kind of learning support, but a strong mentor touch saying that, look, while you learn the content, you should also have a connection with a mentor who can tell you a bit more about that particular topic. I think the mentor touch on the just-in-time skill sets are missing, which we will see evolving in the long run, where people can pick up a mentor and add to that sort of in the entire process. But I may want to just add to this point that right now, to your question, Sami, that if I have so much content, I can pick up anything at any point in time.
Correct.
Therefore, personalization can become very easy. I think the biggest problem in personalization in today's day and age is the aspect of discipline. When it comes to online, bringing discipline is one of the most important aspect, which is the reason why that just-in-time skills and the personalization piece is not picking up, because creating so many of those guide through and sort of solution through is going to be a bit of a challenge in the long run. And therefore, the question for us at this point in time on online education is, how do I bring in discipline for the long foundational course? Also, how do I bring in discipline for the short term skills that you want to pick up as just in time skills? The second problem is a tougher problem to solve in the current context, because the volumes are low, it's very fragmented. If you put human touch, how can you monetize? How can you make the cost structure work? That piece requires still a lot more work, but I think we'll see evolution once we start seeing AI and machine learning coming in to push that learner in the entire journey there.
Awesome, awesome. So over there, Mayank, and I should have asked this question earlier. When you talked about this whole educational system in terms of how it's evolved over the years, and there is a question also which I'll just blend in terms of my own observation. Now, there is a great fallacy, and if I call it that way, I mean, it's my own observation fallacy that you do a kind of a, let's say, a program with a Marquee Institute or Ivy League colleges, then for your entire career throughout, you're made, you're done, kind of a thing. Compared to today, there are barrage of MOOCs, edtech platform, digital reskilling kind of organizations, and there is a kind of a whole set of availability and abundance of programs and kind of interventions over there, learning intervention. Now, for a student, uh, or a working professional who's at a stage in terms of a, you can call it a kind of a mid-career kind of a blues, what is your suggestion? Which path they should adopt? And they haven't made the cut to, let's say, an Ivy League or a top marquee B schools or engineering schools of India. And there are many of them. What's your suggestion? Which way they should look? And what's the way? And I'm building that second layer of question. What's the way for them to picking up the right program, which not only gives them the progressional path, but also makes signals, or rather make them pick up the signals from the noise in terms of saying this is the right program for me.
Yeah, so I think, I mean, that's where I feel the entire economic theory should take precedence than we guiding them what to take. Because I believe that, similar to what the point that you mentioned, how do you decide which institutions are Ivy League versus not Ivy League, for that matter? Which are the premium one, which are the not premium one? And I think it took generations to come to a place that, look, in India, the IIMs, the IITs, the NITs, the bits of the world are good quality institutions. Uh, and it came with a lot of time that we have seen them evolve and seeing outcomes coming out of that. And I think similarly, given that we are in the very early phase of edtech evolution, there is a plethora of options that are available. And sometimes we compare apples to oranges. For example, let's say an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, for example, and I'm just taking, or an MBA from Harvard. You don't compare an MBA from Harvard with a 2-day coaching that happened in Boston or Minnesota or in San Francisco, because those are apples and oranges in that entire comparison. Similarly, in the edtech space, given that there's so much content available, some are for 5 minutes, some are for 50 minutes, some are for 50 hours, some are for 500 hours. And each one of them solves a different objective at the end of the day. When we start painting the same brush and take the same brush for all online education, we sometimes we sometimes start comparing apples and oranges, and we look at apples in the lights of oranges. That we start, that's a fantastic program that's happening with a leader in the valley. It's a 3-day session, and it is so much cheaper and shorter than a 2-year MBA program at Harvard. But the outcomes of both of them are different. So the point I'm making is that in the long run, the solutions and the choice will start happening on the basis of word of mouth and outcomes, because that's how education evolves. And you will start seeing that, okay, people will start categorizing this company really pushes hard on helping the learners go through the journey. This company leaves the learner on their own, but this company is actually a good content library which gives me access to a lot of content available. So I think you will start seeing bucketization of the online education play, which is currently seen as a single stream, which we will start seeing and building it out in the more a content sort of ecosystem play, wherein all of it will be seen as one shot together rather than a different shot in the process.
Wonderful, wonderful. No, I think that's a great point what you made. One of the things we haven't touched, Mang, and that's a big segment what we have in India, particularly, is startups. I mean, huge set of, I would say, startups solving large, complex, unresolved problems for multiple organizations. There is innovation, research, a lot of kind of a, let's say, transformation happening in startups. Unfortunately, if we really talk about their own learning aspirations of the professionals who are associated with startup, I don't think so. It's very well etched out in terms of how they should. And of course, because their model is different, their entire kind of structure, how they work is different. One would like to know in terms of what's your thought around this thing. And second, is there something which upGrad is planning to really say, look, this is what we can do to enable startups get onto the bandwagon of learning and more enrichment in terms of knowledge?
So I think from an enterprise and a startup perspective, we are offering a lot of our program bite-sized, making it shorter, letting people experience, and then figuring out for themselves what they want to do. And I think we are now trying to customize these solutions. But honestly, Samir, so far we haven't yet cracked the model of how we can deal with startups, because our approach and our thought process in that zone is quite different. And therefore, our solutions are not the best solutions for the startup ecosystem today. And I'm putting it out mostly as because that's something that we discuss day in and day out, that how do I make myself relevant? I don't have a very strong solution for that. And the reason for that is also that a lot of startups in today's context are going from one fundraise to another fundraise, and then going to the next fundraise. So the long-term journey and the thought process is not fully etched into the journey right now, and which causes the problem in what skill do I need to push them on. While if I go to a larger corporate, they are very clear that, look, now I have done everything, I have done the 0 to 1, now I'm moving, scaling this up. I know I need this skill set, this skill set, and this skill set to win the market. So we feel that in the the nascent stage of the startup ecosystem, we haven't come across great solutions. The places where we have come across with good solutions are sales and marketing kind of skill sets, which are traditionally required across all learners. And in the entire process, in the entire journey, we are seeing people taking the sales and marketing solution. But if you ask me specific skills, these are the 16 skills that they can push for. No, that's something that we have not come across, more so because the industry is very nascent.
Sure. There's a question I want to take verbatim, Mayank, which is about this. Again, while you mentioned that in the mid part of your narrative and your in your talk, this whole still there is a differentiation which exists between a full-time program versus a distance learning or online. And seemingly, many of the organizations haven't warmed up in terms of giving the same recognition, if I just call it, of what a distance learning or online program is versus a full-time. Do you see that particular thing same way, kind of a thing, as part of you interacting with many of the learners who come to your organization? And if there is that kind of a, let's say today, a gap or a kind of a perception, how's that can be overcome by the organization, or what's your kind of, let's say, viewpoint over there?
Yeah. No, I think that that perception bias is there, wherein People think that, look, online will be very frivolous, may not be the best, and offline is the right thing for people to do. But I think two things are playing on this space, Samir, right now. I think one is from a learner perspective, they don't have an option. I think they cannot go back to an offline institution. So either you say don't skill, or you stay unskilled in the entire process. So there is a growing acceptability that if we have to pick up a skill, online is the way to go. Right? On the second hand, on the second sort of hand, sort of if you look at other hands aspect, what is happening there is that people are realizing that there are certain programs which are 50 hours, 60 hours, 100 hours. There are certain programs which are 500 hours. So the duration of the effort that the learner is putting in is also an equal signaling parameter for the potential recruiters slash companies. If someone comes to me and says, look, I've done 3-year program on learning guitar, what I've done, it's a far stronger signal to me than saying I have picked up a 30-hour program on learning how to play guitar. So that signaling parameter on effort is also becoming more relevant. So what we are seeing, Samir, in the process is a lot of companies are pushing a lot more focus on outcomes and deliverables and projects and GitHub profiles and Kaggle profiles, where you can demonstrate some working models. There's a guy who has built in a program a predictive model for predicting breakout of pandemic or epidemic using social media listening skills. Someone has built a model of early detection of glaucoma by using blood test reports and then linking that to glaucoma sort of identification. So people are picking those kind of projects and highlighting those projects. Then the person sees and says, okay, this means that the person has spent enough time. So we have to find proxies, is what I'm referring to, Samir, that in terms of projects, in terms of the time that they have spent, so that people see this as a far greater, um, uh, far rigorous channel as much as an offline institution is.
Got it. Got it. One of the thing I think, and this is again a part of the question, is this face-to-face classroom learning versus online. And you mentioned, I mean, some of the things around how it needs to be kind of looked into. But today, if this is the way to go and this is the path forward, the behavioral aspect, as you were rightly saying, how in fact I'm looking at you, you're gauging my emotions, you're trying to gauge my behavior, but that's more like okay, it's an esoteric zone over there. So the question is more about in the online model, how do you build that stickiness? How do you kind of, let's say, understand the whole behavioral aspect of the learners? And if there is a way to kind of then improve that learner from a kind of a, let's say, understanding, or let's say as a conceptual kind of augmentation, is there a way where you can see this thing happening in the time to come?
Yeah, so I think if you look at the problem statements, I mean, there are when you go to an offline institution, you can take the whole learning piece and break it down into smaller chunks. And let's see how you can replicate some of these things in the online context also. If you go to, let's say, and I am Bangalore also, let me just take that example. Typically, a professor is teaching 70 people or 80 people or 200 people together. So in a classroom, you don't have that much of one-on-one interaction. It's a perception that I'm in the classroom, therefore I have the access of having that one-on-one interaction. But roughly about less than 5% of the folks actually use it. But having said that, what we do from an upgrad perspective, that this face-to-face interactions is very, very important. But that face-to-face interaction, and I call this question to everyone that, look, when was the last time that you spoke to your best friend? Or when was the last time that you FaceTimed or WhatsApped your best friend? Versus when was the last time that you met your best friend face to face? And you're seeing a lot of interactions and behavior are happening in the online space. So what we do in our program is, while there's a content the faculty is teaching, a lot of these small group coaching has been baked in. So what we do once a learner comes in, basis their background and their profile and the experience zone, we break them down into smaller groups of 5 to 8 people each. So a lot of people, let's say from IT services, will get clubbed together. A lot of QA testers will get clubbed together. People who come from, let's say, entrepreneurial background will get clubbed together, and then allocate a dedicated coach for them uh, that works with them for a period of every fortnight, one session, guiding them, saying, okay, Samir, I know that you're struggling in this. Have you done your work? Have you figured it out? So the beauty of the online model is I can scale up that one-on-one interaction much greater than what I can do in an offline setting. And therefore, while we run with 15,000, 20,000, 100,000 students at one go, I can create an Uberized pool of face-to-face interactions where I have now a pool of about 1,000 plus graders, teaching associate, mentors on the platform. So if a need comes in, I can combine the two, create a marketplace where people are interacting with themselves, and post the marketplace, they go away. But the interaction is very productized. It's very productized that I know that random interactions don't happen. There's a form to be filled. Okay, the learner said this. Did you do these three things? If the learner said this, did you do these three things? And how can I build a McDonald's of delivery rather than creating a very subjective piece? But we do a fair amount of face-to-face interaction. Unfortunately, when people think of online, they think that you cannot have an interaction, but you can have the full content, but plug it with a large people on cloud, which get connected to the individual basis their personal preference. So
You mentioned about these coaches, Mac, and I'm chiming in. Are these from the academia side or they are from the enterprises or various organizations?
we break down the coaches into uh, two different segments. One is from the industry side that will cover about your profile, your job, your transition, how you want to move in. The other one we call as teaching associates or graders, which are for academic queries. So for the academic queries, you can fix up a office hour, which happens in global business schools or global schools. Come interact in the office hours and have a conversation. While on the other hand, you have industry guys who will guide you in your entire building of profile, building of journey. And those interactions are far more personalized and intimate than what you will have in an offline setting. Because in an offline setting, you cannot raise your hand. Some people don't want to raise your hand and ask questions because they feel that they will sound stupid. But when it comes to online, because it is very private, they can ask that question and have a far greater interaction than what they can have in an offline setting also.
Perfect. Man, just a quick one. Would like to know, and I'm sure it's participants also there. What's the way forward plan for upgrad? What are the kind of programs, learning interventions, or kind of different things what you're planning? Would you like to brief the participants, please, on this?
Sure, I think there are three, four things that we're doing, Samir, right now. I think one, we are launching many more programs on IoT, cybersecurity, etc. We are also seeing a fair number of, we are moving more towards degrees, which government has announced. So we'll be launching BCA, BCom, MCA, MCom, and sort of moving in that sort of first time degree seeker. But beyond that, I think the longer term objective and positioning for upgrad, Samir, that we want to take up is being a lifelong AI coach or a career coach. That I want to be in your journey from when you are earning 5 lakh rupees till the time you earn 50 lakh rupees. And how do I play an important part as either a content provider or as a learning provider or as a coach or as a mentor or as an industry expert, etc. So that I become the one super app in your phone where you can come in. If you are thinking tomorrow I have an interview, just in time interview prep. If day after I'm thinking blockchain is emerging, I can take up a small module and pick something up there. So those are the things that we are seeing. That's the way that we want to evolve upgrad to, such that we become a lifelong learning partner, lifelong learning coach. Is slightly moonshot, slightly ambitious, but if you're not dreaming big, then what's the point of doing what you're doing right now?
And that goes with the app tagline what you have, ambitious Raho.
Yes,
With
correct.
that, Mayank, we've hit the time, but must say, fascinating discussion. I think the range of perspectives, what you covered, and holistically what you gave, a lot of these anecdotes, I'm sure were riveting for our participants. And specifically, when you really link this whole aspect about in terms of analogy to fine dining versus fast food learning, that gave ample indications to our learner in terms of where they need to focus and how they should structure their career. And of course, this aspect of what upgrade has in terms of these lifelong coaches or coaches which are really dedicated to the smaller cohorts is a wonderful kind of a initiative and a distinction for upgrade. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it and wonderful to have you here. Thank you all the participants.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Amir. Thanks, NK. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.